And there's a cable here. I'll get it out of the way because I'm live. Yay! It's the Nazarite bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore here in Jerusalem. So happy to be here. So thankful. I already have 3 people here. Hello, Robert. Hello, Yodidiao, and possibly someone else who's watching. Hi there. It's good to be here. I'm going to be going through some Q&A. Feel free to add anything, comment, questions. I see Yodidiao and Robert are already into the into their thing. So let's see. A couple of things before I get into the Q&A this evening. I uploaded to the video some dreadlock related videos that I recorded in 2018 when I first started this channel. Well, the old channel, right? The old Hebrew Nazarite channel. After a few weeks, I was like, wait, but maybe I should do something about dreadlocks as a side project. And so I started a different channel altogether called the Nazarite Dreads. And I uploaded 7 videos, or rather I went live, right? I live streamed 7 different times. And then I decided, no, let's not have a specific dreadlock. There are enough people talking about dreadlocks online. I wouldn't want it to become anything, any source of vanity or pride, or I don't want to focus on the hair, right? I want to focus on the Nazarite vow. The hair is only one facet of it. So I didn't proceed with it, but I did have 7 videos which I live streamed, and they are now available in this channel under the Nazarite Dreads playlist. If you're interested in the spirituality angle of dreadlocks as I perceive it, right, then feel free to check them out. Another thing I did recently was I had an old poetry channel and in 2007, 2008, and I also uploaded different vlogs, like a handful of vlogs at the time, and also in 2017, before we moved to the Netherlands and before I started this Hebrew Nazarite channel sort of thing, I had a video log for about 2.5 months where I uploaded a video almost every single day. I may put those old vlogs from 2008, 2017 up. I may not. I'm not sure. I don't know if you people would be even interested in it. It was interesting for me to go through some of those old videos and see how I'd changed, let's see, in how I talk to the camera and in how well, it changed, let's say. So that's what I wanted to say right now. Let's dive right in. So on the video, The Third Temple, Nina Ovadia said, with a crying smiley, she wrote, "Hippy dippy thinking. You need a haircut. Temple service required good grooming. You can only do this for 30 days anyway." To which I responded, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Can you give me what is the basis and what are the sources for your assertions, Nina?" She hasn't answered yet, but I hope that she will. So hippy dippy thinking, you're darn tootin' right. I am a hippy dippy person, or at least I have my moments. As for needing a haircut, yes, many have mentioned such a thing in the past. I'm not leaning towards a haircut. Temple service required good grooming. Now, I'm not going to say outright, no, what are you talking about? Maybe. I know that, the priests, the Levites, the priests certainly had their clothing, and certainly, they cut their hair every so often. And let's say poor grooming, if you will, was considered to be something, at least hair-wise, for most people who are not Nazarites, was considered to be something that is undesired, especially the men. But I don't think that temple service required good grooming. I don't think that's written anywhere. And as for you can only do this for 30 days, I'm assuming that she is referring to the Nazarite vow, in which case, no, you can do it from 30 days and onward. And in this day and age, a Hebrew man or a woman who take the vow is for life, seeing as how we have no temple to bring offerings. But I really would like, do you people have any sources or basis for the temple service required good grooming? I know nothing about it. I don't know if anybody alive right now has ever been to the temple in Jerusalem. So, it's kind of neither here nor there, but I would like sources on that if anyone has them. Moving on the video, Tribe of Benjamin, Little Andre wrote, "Why isn't there any people in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel today, claiming to be of the tribe of Benjamin?" Thinking smiley, to which I answered, Benjamin effectively was kind of de facto was part of the kingdom of Judah, right? With Judah and Benjamin, and with parts of the tribe of Levi. And I said, just like Mordechai in the scroll of Esther, right? It says that there was a Yehudi, a man of Judah, in Shushan, in the capital Shushan, of Yemini, of Benjamin. So, which raises the question, was he of Judah or of Benjamin? And so the answer is, he was of the tribe of Benjamin, of the kingdom of Judah. And Levi, parts of Levi, also became parts of Judah, he says, right? He says Levi was also part of the kingdom of Judah, but people still differentiate themselves from the Jews, right, as people of the tribe of Judah, and they call themselves Levi or Kohen, right? Levites or priests. To which I said, yeah, the Levites were dispersed though throughout the entire two kingdoms. Some of the Levites and the priests went to exile. Some of the Levites and the priests remained in the kingdom of Judah and were later exiled to Babylon, right? The Assyrian exile is still ongoing, the Babylonian exile, the people returned, right? And so the kingdom of Judah comprised Yehuda and Binyamin and parts of Levi. And because Levi is unique among the 12 tribes, each of them have their own uniqueness, of course. The tribe of Levi, more specifically as the priestly tribe, was segregated in different ways, which is why nowadays people like myself who are considered part of the tribe of Levi, many of them call themselves Jews because they come from the kingdom of Judah, but they are still Levites and priests, respectively. So I think that the separation, and there are people who do consider themselves part of the tribe of Benjamin, but they are still called Yehudim, like people of Judah. Again, any comments you have on that? I'd love to hear them. So moving on, in one of the videos I mentioned gay pride that was going on at the time, right? The pride parade in Jerusalem, and I said, I get it. To which Andre said, why is it that you get it? And I answer, the pendulum, right? The conceptual pendulum is swinging in that direction now in order to bring balance, right? The pendulum swings and swings and swings until it finds balance, right? I said for many years, like many years, gay people were under attack, sometimes in real mortal danger, all kinds of terrible things, many times in the name of God, and they were persecuted many times unjustly, and that's not a good thing. On the other hand, nowadays they are being celebrated, let's say in the Western world, if you will. They're being celebrated and put on a pedestal like never before. Never has there been such openness towards, let's say, other sexualities, sexual orientations. And they're being celebrated and put on a pedestal, I think, also unjustly. Neither one of those is good. And I tell him that I think that that society will find a balance eventually, where before it was in the Middle Ages it was known as the love that I dare not speak its name, and nowadays they're being celebrated and really put on high as something that's the alphabet squad, as it's known, is getting tons of coverage. They control this and that, so people say. I don't know what they control. People say the Jews control all kinds of stuff. I have no idea. So neither one of those is good, right? Pride goeth before a fall, as Proverbs says. So pride of just for being who you are is not necessarily a good thing. You need to earn that, let's say, pride. Like, and I've mentioned this in the past, I would say, just say that a Talmid Chacham, a person of Torah, should have 1/60th, 1 in 60 of pride. You do need a little bit of pride, and you do need a touch, right, of standing up for yourself, obviously, being proud of what you are. But to have these parades, I see it in a big way, and I might be wrong, as a very reactionary thing to those many centuries, and more, in which the gays were persecuted. Andre continues and asks, what would you have done in ancient Israel, where it was commanded to stone gay men in particular? So which I answered that at the times of ancient Israel, right, this was a time when the divine revelation was much more apparent. And it was a time when the divine revelation dwelt in the temple, revealed to the men, gays or straight, 3 times a year at the very least, when they approached Jerusalem during the 3 pilgrimages, right, the 3 festivals of Sukkot, Shavuot, and Pesach. And I said it was a different time altogether, right? It was that I can't really fathom. I can't really understand what it was like. I look at the place of the temple, right? It's very close to my home every single day, but that doesn't mean that I know what it was like. I don't know what it was like because the people of Israel then lived de facto without sin, in the sense of that there were 2 daily sacrifices in the morning and in the evening, right? Evening before sundown. Those who were sinning, let's say during the night, they would be atoned with the morning sacrifice, and those who sinned during the day would be atoned for in the afternoon slash evening, like twilight sacrifice. And so for all the times of the temple, until those sacrifices, the Korban Tamid, could no longer be offered because there were no sheep, because of the siege. Until that time, everything, that's just how it went on. There was constant and uh, continuous atonement. The priests, the Levites, the Israelites at the temple, which would also switch each week, right? There was an atonement there that was on the individual level for those who brought offerings, and a collective national level with the sacrifices that are spoken of, right, on the daily sacrifices and the incense and many different things which literally atoned for the different things. And I told him, if I was faced with the divine revelation which dwelt in the temple, I would certainly, undoubtedly, be a very different man than I am now. It's not a question of good or bad. It's a question of I would be very different. And likewise, those who engage in homosexual activity, and I'm not going to talk about orientation, attraction, two men living together, simply the act, which is not condoned by the Bible, right? The physical act of homosexual relations. That's the sin. It doesn't say don't be attracted to guys, and it doesn't say don't live with a guy. It says don't do that deed. So let's be precise about that, right? They would probably be different too at the time, faced with that divine revelation. Once every 3 years, once every 7 years, it would be the entirety, pretty much, of the people of Israel who would show up on Sukkot, on the Feast of Tabernacles, the festival of Sukkot, in order to receive the Torah once again and hear the Torah read out loud and receive that covenant again. Not just the men who were above a certain age, right? Men who are of age, but everyone, the men, the women, the children. And I tell him I pick and choose. I pick and choose everything, and I make no apology, right? And I also choose, perhaps wrongly so, to value certain commandments over others and certain verses over others. The prophets, in the same way, I tell him, if we put any kind of stock in the prophecies and the prophets that were canonized and set aside and written down in a book, even though there was no commandment to do so, our sages said, no, these need to be written down, right? The sages, the prophets spoke of many things, right? Social injustice or injustice at large, right? Freeing the slaves, not worshiping false gods or idols, adultery, murder. But they never once, not once, is homosexuality mentioned. Not even one time, if I'm not mistaken. And that gives me a little inkling, a hint, right? Some insight into that which was more important, so to speak, right? Just my opinion. I have no idea. Society will find its balance. Part of why I think people are so into this anti-gay thing is because it has to do with sexual relations, which have to do with the family, right? And the structure of family, or with the breakdown of the family. And so that's why I think it hurts people also. It's one of our basic biological urges. The sexual urge is what brings the species together, and it's what continues the species de facto, in actuality. So it would hurt many people, I'm sure. But I don't know if this is what God would want, because what do I know, right? Let's continue here. S.E. Hall, the Nazarite, asks, what is your personal view on the multiverse? So I told him, I very much believe it exists. I could never back it up with any kinds of concrete claims because I don't know enough. I couldn't put it to you in terms of quantum mechanics, mathematics, physics. I only have the tree of life. The tree of life, which is expanding and contracting, right? Fractaling in and out of itself. All right, a 10 within 10 within 10 within 10 within 10 from now and until the cows come home. So that's how I see it. It very well does exist in the sense of multiple worlds and universes. But regarding the different theories in astrophysics and quantum mechanics, I don't know anything about it. I wouldn't presume to, but I could totally see, as a Hebrew man and a student of the Tree of Life, how that can be exactly right. S.E. Hall continues. He said, your dreads always reminded me of how Jonathan Davis's dreads look nowadays from the band Korn. Now, so I answered him, I loved Korn in the 90s. I discovered them and their early records, right? The first three records, I listened to them all the time, back in the 90s. I never got back into them after my yeshiva years, my mandatory military service years, but I'll still listen to those albums, right? With their self-titled album, Korn, Follow the Leader, Life is Peachy. I'll still listen to them every now and then. There's such raw emotion all kinds of emotions there. It gets me every time. It really, really does. That's what I told him. And even though, right, there's tons of curses and there's tons of uh, all kinds of, well, songs that are perhaps not very pleasant, but life isn't pleasant always. And sometimes there's a lot of anger and misfortune, and sometimes there's a ton of difficulty. And those albums, because I can't speak of their later ones, those bass notes, oh my God. I mean, there's Jonathan Davis's like incomprehensible his mumblings and gurglings and his well, what's the word I'm looking for? His growls. They certainly, there's an aesthetic there that appeals to me. I may not agree with everything they say. In fact, I definitely don't agree with everything they say there, but I can take part of the music and some of the lyrics. Let's continue here. James Isaacson said, "What is your opinion of fantasy creatures like elves or unicorns? Also, are you just Torah or do you also believe in Jesus or whatever name you want to use?" So, well, I've mentioned my views on Yeshua many, many times. I'll give it over here at the end. But regarding fantasy creatures, I answered, I think we all make up stories and characters continuously because we all are, in fact, still embedded in that great story of creation, right? And we tell the story of our being and our history through narratives, and we live out narratives. We cultivate narratives, we expand on them, we dissect them and analyze them. We try to understand where we are in this whole thing. We all have a story, right? God spoke being into existence, and we speak things and create things much like being in the image of God. And I say that's why I don't mind when people say that the Torah itself is just a collection of mythology and nothing more, because that's that's not unlike elves and unicorns. People say elves and unicorns are fake, and the Torah is all just as fake, and that's fine as far as I'm concerned. They can say whatever they want. Conceptually speaking, as a story that someone made up that might have some value, right? It has merit, that type of thinking, because not everyone needs to follow those commandments. They were given to a specific people. You could learn a lot from Torah, doesn't mean you need to follow it. If you're a Hebrew man or woman, you need to contend with it if you choose. And there's that covenant, right, of the nation, of the people. But it's like elves, unicorns, Moses and Joshua, they can all be stories as far as I'm concerned. The question is, now what? What is it that I'm learning, right? The unicorn is supposed to be this mythical, perfect thing, as J.K. Rowling wrote in Harry Potter, and I'm sure she's basing it on other lore that I don't know, right? To slay a unicorn is a grievous thing. You've slain something so perfect that you are forever tainted, right? You live a cursed life, a half-life, something to that effect. I might be quoting the movie there and not the book, but I digress. And things like elves, right? Elves are what? They're helpers, right? Whether you take the elves in the North Pole with the Santa Claus, or whether you take other sorts of elves, whether you think that they are mischievous creatures or helping creatures, whatever it is, that it has value. A lot. I mean, take the Brothers Grimm and their tales. It's not just a tale, right? There's a moral there. There's wisdom to be gleaned from there. You can learn something from there. There's value there if you want to see it that way, or you can just see it as a bunch of collected BS that has no room in any kind of modern day society. As for Yeshua, I told him, as I've told you many times before, I believe he was, if he was around, actually, I believe that I may have followed him as well at the time, if I was alive at the time. I believe that he was a sage and a potential Messiah, a potential king, just like everyone else, right? All the different Hebrews. But his potential reign ended when he died. And because the living, the Messiah in the Hebrew faith and in Torah has always and ever been a living, breathing human being, that's where it ends for me, right? He lived and died a Hebrew man, no more, no less. That's how I see it. All right, those enough questions for now. Let's go on with this chat over here. Robert asks here in the chat, making a statue of a human, would that be making a statue of a human? Would that be against the Torah, making a graven image? So I'll give you the halachic view on it. Halacha says you can have parts of a human, meaning you cannot have a full human image with 10 fingers, 10 toes, and all the different features. That would be a graven image because man is in the image of God. And because we are not supposed to make an image of God, we're not supposed to liken God or look up to the stars, the heavens, or anything that crawls on the earth or in the sea. all right, or swims in the sea and say, okay, that's my God. That's why, halachically speaking, you can make an image if it's imperfect. If you make an image, a sculpture, whatever it may be, providing you don't worship it, right? Obviously, then that's idolatry. But if we're talking about simply making an image of a human being, that's allowed within certain parameters. You're not supposed to make a complete and full, anatomically correct, let's say, human being. That you're not allowed to do. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a long time since I've gone over these halachas, right, over these laws. If I'm not mistaken, there needs to be something there that is lacking, that is wanting, that is imperfect, and that would be permissible, at least under certain circumstances. So Yodidio says, hey, Robert, I remember you mentioned adding or subtracting from the Bible is against Torah. I agree, he says. Doesn't that apply to the New Testament? Ooh, that's a good one. Robert says, what's up? Yes, it does. That does apply. Robert agrees. Example, says Yodidio, in the last verses of Mark, and Yeshua against the stoning of the adulteress. I'll send it to you, he says. Okay, so we're not going to do that now. I sent it to you on Facebook. Once again, these connections that are being made here, the discussions that go on here and in the comments and and on Facebook, and the different, the different interactions between you people. I love it when it, when it expands beyond the confines of the channel. Ooh, hey, Jamal, shalom, Tanel. I hope you and your little family are doing well over there. Question, could you speak on an old video you did about teaching your kids Torah? Advice on very young kids with adult themes in Torah. Also on teaching brachot and tfilot, private and ritual forms. Well, first of all, I knew from the get-go that I am not going to go with the classic Orthodox route with my kids. And I'm not sending them to a religious school either. They do have, being in a Jewish school, they do have some Torah there, and they do have some religion there that they are taught, but they don't pray in the morning, let's say, and they don't have brachot. I teach them in the home and outside. This is how we live our lives. Okay, so let's break this down a bit. Teaching your kids Torah. Advice on very young kids with adult themes. I skip them over. Either I skip them because if I can't break it down to the level that they can understand, if I can't whittle it down to something that they can comprehend, I'll just go right past it. And if I can somehow make it so they understand by giving an analogy or by giving, because the thing is that right now it's all oral. I'm teaching, I have the book in front of me, but I'm teaching it orally. I'm reading certain verses and everything, certain commentaries and midrash as well. I have, there's such a wealth of Torah, oral and written. So, and oral, which was written. And so I take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I throw it together to make it what I believe would be how I want them to be raised, right? In a path of truth and justice and righteousness. Very, very plainly. So adult themes in the Torah, it depends on the age, and it depends on what they can comprehend. I'm not going to say dumb it down, but I'll usually bring it down to their level, and certain things I just pass them right by. And the thing is this, when my kids come to me with certain questions, if I know that there's a root in Torah, I'll give them that source. I'll give them that root. Again, maybe not verbatim, because I still need to censor it a little bit because they are still quite young. As they mature, and I've done this actually, as they are maturing and they understand more about the world and they come with questions or questions rising from the study, then I'll either say that's for a later time, that's for later studies, because I definitely say, yes, the Torah does address it. We'll have to learn that at another time. It's for another time. It's for older children. And many times I'll cite the Pirkei Avot, right? 5 years old, you start the written Torah. 10 years old, you start the oral Torah. And there's a reason, right? 13, you become bound, at least in some part, by the commandments. And then you have teenagehood, and at 20, as it's laid out in Pirkei Avot, because our sages understood that there's a progression here, and you want to start small and build on top of different things. Also on teaching brachot and tfilot. So again, as for tfilot, I tell them, talk to God. I talk to God every single day, just like I'm talking to you, I tell them. I talk to him as if he's right here with me. I tell him I tell him what I would want. I tell him what I did well. I tell him what I did wrong. And I ask to be a better person. Anything you want to say, just like you would ask a friend or a father or a mother, or just talking, spontaneously talking to God. That's the best tefillah there is. If they ever want to open up the siddur, which we do have several of, then they are welcome to do it. I'll tell them exactly when to stand, when to sit, when to bow, when to recite this, when to recite that. I still have it up here. I did it for many, many, many years. I hope not to forget it either. I still daven, I still pray with a minyan at work. We have the mincha, the midday prayers. I still pray almost every day, but well, let's put it this way. So I still remember it quite well. And if they should ever want to do that, that's their prerogative, and I will be glad to facilitate it. But I teach them that tefillah is talking to God. I don't want them to immediately have the words of others. I want them to have their words. I want them to cultivate and develop a meaningful, intimate, daily relationship with the Most High and with the divine in them, to teach them that this is how you become a better person. You speak things into being. As for brachot, we do recite the prayer, the brachot, right? The blessings before and after food, but I put my spin on it. And sometimes, let's say if my younger one makes a mistake and the older one corrects him, sometimes I'll let it be, depending on the case. And sometimes I'll say, no, no, you know what he did is fine. We don't have to correct him every single time. He still did it. There's intent there. There's the name of God there, and that's good enough as long as he is calling out to God and giving thanks. And if I see that they forget, I won't say, say your bracha. I will go, did you give thanks to Adonai? And they were like, oh, I forgot, or I'll do it now, or and like Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, from the rather lengthy grace after meals, based on the blessings of Moses, Joshua, David and Shlomo, and later on, right, in our sages. Then I have a very, very short one that encompasses what the Torah says we ought to do, right? To give thanks for the land, to give thanks for the food, and well, I've mentioned this before, but that's my take on it. So private and ritual forms. I think that answers both of them. If it doesn't, please let me know. If you have other questions, Jamal, about it, I can understand. Now, look, if I'm not mistaken, you're more halachically oriented and you're more orthodox than I am in that sense. So I think it would be, like in the case of Torah, start small. I think it's better that they do one or two things regularly and build on that than um, then sort of overload them with information and brachot, that it becomes a kind of yoke or burden. Also, I never ever want them to feel shame. If I say, hey, did you give thanks to Adonai? And they say, oh, I forgot, I say, that's cool. Just like that. That's cool. Because I'm reminding them. All I do is remind them. I don't shame them and I don't reprimand them. I simply ask them very plainly, kindly, because I don't want them to feel any religious shame ever, unless it comes from inside of them. I don't want to be the instigator. I know what that's about. I'm not going to do that. So that's what I think. Just off the top of my head. But yeah, I did have a video on kids and Torah. It was lovely, as I recall. I do not have it anymore. Yodidiao says, keep in mind, 153 is from the New Testament. He runs away after I hook him, catch and release. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm sorry. I can see you're talking about what happened before with Robert, but I don't know the New Testament, offhand. So sorry about that. But I'm sure he knows what you're talking about. Robert says to Jamal. Robert says Jamal has been on Jonathan's channel the longest. Little Andre. I'm not sure what you mean, but yeah, both of them have been on this channel for ages. Thank God. Yodidiao asks Robert, "Do you study the New Testament in Greek?" And then Yodidiao gives a Greek, something in Greek, which I don't read, and 2048, the Gematria man strikes again. Robert says, Sean, no brother, just English and some Ivrit and some Hebrew. Well, that's cool. Jamal says, thanks, Robert, much love and light. Oh, ve'ahava. I mentioned this too as well. That new aginess of light and love is a double-edged sword. But I know, Jamal, I have no doubt you mean it in the best, pleasant, positive vibrationist sort of way. It's wonderful that we can get together and understand each other and give thanks and wish each other love and light. I think it's a wonderful thing. Yodidiao says the New Testament is more interesting in Greek than English. Well, I can certainly see why that is. Definitely. Lisa says, so in deciding which sect of Judaism, so I'm deciding, or in deciding which sect of Judaism is right for me. I tend to agree more with the Orthodox, but I'm curious about why some other Jews don't mind using electricity on Shabbat. How do you figure out if it is or isn't okay to use electricity on Shabbos? Well, I would say go to the sages and the rulers on halacha at the time when electricity kicked in and appeared in the world, and you can see the different opinions there on why it would and wouldn't be considered either fire or labor, depending on how you go about it. But as you know, many Orthodox Jews, if not like halachic Jews as such, do not turn electricity on or off. There are different halachic loopholes, like setting timers for certain things, and some say that shouldn't be, and some say electricity should be permissible. And I spoke of this, well, way back, and even recently on this channel, right, on electricity on Shabbos. I spoke of it in a certain video. So I say go to the source, and the source is halacha, right? Search for halacha on electricity, either modern day halacha or, a couple of 100 years back, or 150 years when it was starting to be more in the homes. You should definitely check it out. There's a lot there, and they cite different things, right, from days of old and from the Mishnah, from the Talmud. So how do you figure it out? You research. You research, because there are many people who have wondered the same thing, who have done the research already, and you need to go in there, I think, and figure it out for yourself. Within the different opinions in halacha, why it is, why it isn't, why it should be, why it should not be. I think that there's a lot there that you could definitely learn. And if you want some sources, specific sources, let me know. I'll definitely send them your way. Ariel says, hey guys, why does the commenter in the chat before suggest that they believe people used to stone people for homosexuality in the past? Well, it says to'evahi, right? It says that it's an abomination, a to'eva, something that you should shun, right? A man who lays with a man as he does with a woman, if I'm not mistaken, that's from Leviticus, right? From Vayikra, if I'm not mistaken. Also, it appears, I think, does it appear again in Deuteronomy and Devarim? I don't recall. Once or twice it appears. And so, I don't remember the precise halacha, but look, there definitely needs to be the proper way of going about it. Meaning, you need to have a court, you need to have witnesses, you need to have a warning, and you need to have the person fully aware of the illegality, halachically speaking, of his actions before you take action. So I think that's where he gets it from. Stoning. I don't recall what it would be. I think that it would be flogging and not stoning. I don't think that they would be put to death. Or maybe I'm thinking of a certain circumstance in which they wouldn't be put to death. I don't recall offhand. I don't recall. You see, there's so much for me to that I don't recall. Some of it is because I never looked into the halacha, and some of it is because I may have learned it way, way, way back, and that I haven't learned it since, which incidentally is why you should always keep going over things again and again and again. This is that I pick and choose what I want to go over, and at least at this point in my life, I have my opinions, as I said in the beginning of the video, on homosexuality and on gay life and pride, so I don't feel the need, since we have no court and we have no temple and we have no way of carrying it out in actuality, so I go over it less. That's not to say that you shouldn't go over the halachas pertaining, let's say, to the temple, just because we don't have one, but it's less in the day-to-day, obviously. So you pick and choose what you want to go over, but it's certainly great to go over. Yodidiel says, I tell my gay friend he's lucky we live in modern day or he'd be dead already. Right, so I guess the penalty was death, though I don't remember if it was skila or something else, but I'm assuming it would be stoning if you guys are saying it was stoning. LOL, yeah, you did the song Twist. That's right, Twist. Hey, Essie Hall, how you doing? That's right, man. Yeah, good stuff, man. Oh, what a way to start a record, huh, Nazarite, man? What a way to start a record with that drum and that bass. It just explodes into your brain. Yodidiel says, my gay friend is pro-vax and anti-Torah. I'm anti-vax and pro-Torah. He tells me he's going to vaccinate me during the night when I'm sleeping. Hey, man, different people over the years have told me they'll cut my hair when I'm asleep. Hasn't happened yet. I wouldn't count on him doing that. Leprechauns, says Robert Harrison. Right, like leprechauns. Now, the idea of leprechauns being at the end of the rainbow with a pot of gold, something like that, right? Where if you go to that place that you can't really reach, or if you aim for that thing that you can't really reach because you can never get to the end of the rainbow, if you aim at that thing that is always moving away from you, if you posit an ideal, right, on beauty and on a covenant, the rainbow is a covenant, right? It's a reminder to God and all that, then there is gold at the end of it, right? There's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's a dragon that hoards the gold and and has taken the virgin. It's well, I'll leave it at that. Yodidiao says to Elisa says to Yodidiao, don't go to sleep around him. LOL. Yes, indeed. Oregon, hey Karen, hello Oregon Freebird. Shalom, my friends. Happy Monday, a very happy Monday. I hope you guys are off and gals are off to a wonderful beginning of this week. I mean, my beginning was yesterday. Some people begin it on Monday. Work week. Let's leave it at let's call that. Lisa says shalom to her. Ariel says, isn't a golem ever so slightly in the shape of a person? Yes, it is, but the difference is that the golem. Well, look, I've never seen a golem. Certainly, I've never seen an animated golem. So, is it in the shape of a person? Yes, it is in the shape of a person, but I think that it's, again, imperfect. It's imperfect, if I'm not mistaken, and it's animated with sacred names. Very, very famously, if I'm not mistaken, the final thing, or at some point in the ritual of animating the clay, you would write the word emet, meaning truth, emet, aleph mem tav, on his forehead, and which would animate him, or it was part of the process. And then when you wanted to basically have him turn back to lifeless clay, you would strike and remove the aleph, and from emet, it would turn into met, which is dead. And when you take away the aleph, which represents the Most High, it's the first letter, it's the 10 sfirot, it's a bunch of things. If you remove the aleph, right, from truth, it becomes dead, right? If you remove, and it's also in part to say that we are clay, right? We are made from the earth, that whole thing. I'm not talking about evolution, right? I'm talking about Genesis right now. We are the earth animated with the breath of life in the divine image. If we don't incorporate the aleph, if we don't incorporate Torah, commandments, covenant, the Most High into our lives, we are as good as dead. Something like that. There's the very famous Maharal, the Maharal, right? The Golem of Prague. Look that up if you want, right? Who was fighting the different, he went against what? The different pogroms at the time. Fascinating stuff, man. Fascinating. Yedidiao says to Lisa, we slept in the same room for 6 months. He let me live in Brazil with him when I had no place to live. Well, that's very kind of him. Yeah, and I saw some photos of Yodidiao over there working there in Brazil. I think he's back where he was now. S.E. Hall says, I mean, you could just as easily say that the Psalms and Prophets are adding to the Torah in technical terms. No, they're not adding to the Torah. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses. What they are adding is to Scripture, let's say. So, yeah, but they're not adding to Torah. Torah is Torah, Scripture is Scripture. That's how I see it. Yao says he was actually the only one who didn't judge me about vaccines in Brazil. I said he showed me grace. I guess I'll put down my stone. Right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. For sure. There's a very I mentioned this in the past. There's the book The Year of Living Biblically by A.J. Jacobs. I wholly recommend it. Basically, it's a guy, a Jewish guy who used to write for Maxim magazine. He was still writing for them at the time. He decided to live out the Bible literally for a year. Fascinating. I am saying the word fascinating a lot in this broadcast, but it is fascinating. The Year of Living Biblically by A.J. Jacobs, very prolific writer. He still puts out tons of books. My Life as an Experiment, 1,000 Thank Yous, there are the Know-It-All, where he read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Really awesome guy. He has quite a life, let me tell you. And he carried around a stone in his pocket in New York. He carried around a stone in his pocket in case he had to stone someone. It's written in the Bible. He was walking around Central Park, and he was with longish hair and dressed in white, as it says in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, that you should be anointed with oil and robed in white at all times. So that's what he did. And a guy says, why are you dressed like that? He says, I'm living out this year biblically. And he says, so they got to the, and he says, have you ever stoned someone or something like that? And he said, no, but I carry it around in case I meet an adulterer or something like that. And he says, well, I'm an adulterer, stone me. So A.J. Jacobs takes out the tiny pebble, a pebble, not a big rock, a tiny pebble from his pocket and starts to pelt him with tiny stone or a few pebbles, and he starts to throw them at him. And that guy got mad. Lisa says, oh, that was kind of him to help you. Yes, to give you a place. But he can't poison you in your sleep. Tell him that's against whichever Bible he believes in, Yodidiao. Yeah, well, poison, not poison, far be it from me to know. I'm vaxxed. Happily so, I must add. Ariel Marshall says, "Happy Monday, Oregon Freebird." And hello, I don't know if I said hello to Ariel. Hello, Ariel. Good to have you here. Yodidiel says to Lisa, his nickname is Dead Man Morto. He sleeps like 22 hours a day. Impressive much? Very impressive indeed. He actually has all my Torahs in Brazil. Brazil won't let me return unvaxxed. Ah, okay. Well, either this will blow over and the vaccine mandates, or will be abolished. But at some point, or maybe you'll have him ship them to you. So I'm not sure. S.E. Hall says, but I hope you get them back. Or unless you decide, okay, they're there for whoever needs them. Maybe you'll let them go. Maybe not. I hope you get them back if you want them. Yodidiao. Let's see. S.E. Hall says, I think Orthodox Judaism sees electricity as equal to kindling of fire. So right, that's the debate. That's the dispute. Is it fire? It's not really fire, but the thing is that lightning, if you go with the four elements, lightning is considered, at least practically or conceptually, as a form of fire, A, because it can light things on fire and burn things. And B, even though it's not a flame which rises up from the earth, it does constitute a kind of, it has a fire-esque element to it, fire-esque attributes to it, so that's why. I'm thinking. Others say that it's a labor, if I'm not mistaken. Again, it's a long time since I've went over these halachas, so I'm not sure. But yeah, most likely Orthodox Judaism, by and large, would consider it halachically kindling a fire. And that's why you can't do it, but you can set a timer to do it. Right? If you have, let's say, a space heater, and you have it on a timer, you're not the one doing it. You simply set it before Shabbos. After you light the candles, you don't touch it, and it goes on and off in accordance with the timer, what's called a Shabbos clock, a Sha'on Shabbat. And again, some would say that's just a loophole. A halachic loophole is still permissible, while others would say, no, come on, you either do it or you don't do it. Don't play these games. And I get both of those opinions. Get new ones, says Lisa to Yodidiao. Get new Torahs. S.E. Hall says, at the very least, there is a law that says not to have people work for you on the Sabbath, which I would say could apply to the electric companies, right? That's, again, a big debate here in Israel. It's a big debate here in Israel, and there are some who have their own generators, big friggin' generators, or small ones, depending on the household. They don't use the state of Israel's electricity. They use their own electricity, as it were, and they use a generator in order to not use electricity that is, of the state of Israel, right? The electric company's electricity. So yes, you're absolutely right about that. Some people say that it's wrong and that we should all be using our own generators. We set them on before Shabbat and we let them run. Yodidiao says, he always tried to get me to eat his nasty food. Well, from what I heard, South America has good food. But I never ate. He eventually said, Sean, you need to eat more. And I said, dead man, you need to eat less. Well, I suppose that's, again, a debate that can continue going, in perpetuity. Lisa says, correct, they do. So yeah, it is a kindling of fire, says Lisa. Jamal says, thank you, wonderful explanation and very helpful. Chazaku baruch. Chazaku baruch means be strong and blessed. Well, hey, again, that's just my opinion, and I will definitely pay a price for not taking the Orthodox mainstream path. But that's a price I'm willing to pay because the value that I and they, my kids, are getting out of it, I hope, is worth that price. So that's what I'm going to go with. That's what I'm going with. Robert says, there are Hasidic Jews that have a maid come over on Shabbat and clean. Yes, this is a big, big thing called a Goy Shel Shabbat, a Shabbos Goy, a Shabbos Gentile. And there are, again, many halachas there. You can't actually tell on Shabbos, if something happens, you can't tell, if a light turns off accidentally, you can't summon a Gentile into your home and say, hey, could you flip that switch? But you can say something like, oh, gee, it's dark in here, huh? And have him sort of understand that you want him to flip the switch. Again, it's this minutia of halacha that many people would consider horrible and wrong and loopholes and just playing games. And others would say that while the devil might be in the details, it is in the details of halacha that we can find its beauty and the way that it pertains to every single facet of life, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you lose consciousness and sleep. There's a lot there. And even more than that, there's also a fast that you might want to fast if you have a recurring bad dream. So even things that happen in your subconscious are things which halacha has a lot to say about. For better or worse, halacha is all encompassing. That's why it's called halacha, a path. This is how you walk it, you know? So let's see. Oh, where are we? Did I lose my spot here? Yes, okay. Lisa says, S.E. Hall, so what do you suggest? How could this issue be solved? A very good question. I await his answer here. Jamal says, explain the love and light double edge. Please and thank you. Haha, never heard of this before. Well, this is not something that I've experienced in my life. But the idea of love and light is considered by many to be very much connected with the New Age. And I read an article, not in a mainstream magazine or a paper of any kind, nothing in media, in that kind of media. It was a very nonconformist sort of subculture magazine that I was a part of for a while, and I subscribed to it. Wonderful, really good stuff, art and poetry and all kinds of, someone there who is a communicator, right? Who communicates with higher powers by her own, by her own definition and admission. That's what she does. She's a communicator. She said that she was told by this higher power, or higher powers, right? Angels, messengers, what have you, forces that were speaking to her. She said that she was asked by the person interviewing her, how can you tell the good forces from the bad forces? How can you understand if you're taking something that is really divine, from the good side, if you will, the light side, or if it might maybe the dark side? And she said the first thing that you want, if you have a force that is revealed to you, that is all about that is all about light and love, you should doubt it. First and foremost, you should doubt it, because many times dark forces will masquerade and wear a costume of light and love, right? It's a honey trap, and they'll trap you and they'll take you down, right? And then the road to hell is paved with good intentions, something like that. This idea of light and love does have its place, but always in the confines of a covenant, a rigid covenant, right? Where you have certain pillars, where you have certain boundaries. And this is something I think that our sages, for all of for all of the faults in Torah Sheba'al Peh, in the oral Torah, one of the things they said was asu siag laTorah, make a fence around the Torah. Now this also is a double-edged sword in and of itself, but it's there to teach you something. It means that you should be critical. A, you should be critical. B, you should have a fence around your beliefs. So the light and love thing, because let's put it this way, and I've said this before, when two forces go to war, physical, right? Two nations go to war, each one of them thinks that they are the righteous one. Each one of them thinks that God is behind them, if that's how it's going down, right? Each one of them thinks that they are right, the others are wrong. Yeah, I am here to liberate them from their wrong thinking. I'm here to, right, or if they were attacked, right, to liberate the territory, or whatever the case may be. This idea of love and light can lead you down some very dark places, because if we consider, for instance, very plainly, I'll say it, if we're considering this idea of sexual promiscuity or sexual liberty, that's for many people light and love, because it's based on the very thing which brings more creation, right, into existence, people and things. And it's one of the things that it's one of the great pleasures in the world. But again, if you ask about the sexual relation and relationship thing, if you ask someone who follows halacha, they will tell you you ought to remain a virgin until you have a ketubah, until you are married, and then everything almost is permissible, right, with consent and with intent and all that good stuff. But until that time, it isn't. Meaning that love and light are very wonderful, but you should probably do it in the context. You should very well define it. You need to define what that means to you, because if it's not clear to you, and if it's very murky, then you could end up in places that you don't want to be, all the while thinking that you're doing things that are awesome. And we have, let's say, different sages and rabbis of modern day and probably of old, who, let's say, right, when women, and this is not a general thing, here and there, right, we hear stories of very famous rabbis who have sex with married women who come to them for consultation because they were told by this outside force that their semen is holy and they need to and they need to spread it. And it's like you're going against halacha here. But you're doing it in the name of light and love, of wanting to spread light and love, to spread sacredness through your seed, which is holy. And it's like, okay, so you need to define your boundaries very closely, even if they change. You need to know what you're doing. Because light and love is very grand conceptually, but but light and love can also have a very dark side, a very the thing which is the complete opposite of light and love. While you are completely certain that you're doing the right thing, it's difficult to discern. I'm always talking about discernment, of knowledge of good and evil here. We always need to constantly need to always and constantly keep myself in check to understand where it is that I'm coming from and where it is that I'm going, and it is what I'm doing now good for all intents and purposes, right? For lack of a better term, in the eyes of the Lord. And that has to do with it has to do primarily with the feedback that you get from others and from creation. You can't always simply rely on yourself because you are flawed and you are fallible always. So that's what I'm going to say about that. It's a double-edged sword because it can lead you to dark places. On the other hand, it can be a great thing if you channel love and light within the context of a covenant and of certain boundaries. Then you are set free, right? Much like remain a virgin until you're married, and then everything is cool. But until that moment, until you have that union which is sacred and blessed, and in front of witnesses and or a congregation and whatnot, and you sign your name on that ketubah, right, on that agreement, and you sanctify your woman, that's when all of that is permissible. And until that time, different ideas, right? It might be, it might not be. And like I said, right, again, halacha has different. I'm giving the general mainstream halacha. Likewise, once you're married, not everything is permissible all the time. In times of menstruation, certain things are forbidden. In the times of the temple, where we had the tum'ah v'tahara, purity and impurity, ritual, right, cleanliness and uncleanliness, even if you were married, there were some times when you could not approach your woman, even though she's your woman. So it's always about having that balance and keeping yourself in check and having boundaries. So that's what I'm thinking about that. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. I mean, you see me. I am very much for love and light, but I need to always be defining what that is exactly, because you can channel it in a myriad of ways, and some of those ways will lead you down a dark path, that honey trap. S.E. Hall says to Robert, yeah, I never understood that, because you are supposed to give all your workers and anyone in your gates rest. You're supposed even give animals rest. That is correct. Your animals are supposed to rest on the Shabbat. Jamal says electricity is not fire and violates no prohibitions on Shabbos. The early sages, when electricity was first used to use it. There was a campaign to anachronistically prohibit its use. So, okay, yeah, listen to Jamal here because he studies more halacha than I do, if I'm not mistaken, and he's more wise in these ways than I am. So I'm saying there is that opinion in halacha, and there is what halacha says nowadays. And some people would keep definitely all kinds of halachas, but would disagree on this issue of electricity. And which is why I said, Lisa, you need to do your research. That's what I'm going to say. Jamal says, my rabbi, Chaim Ovadia, has many shiurim, many lessons, many teachings on this question of electricity on Shabbat and Yom Tov, right, on the festivals, the holidays. Torah ve'ahava YouTube page, right? So if you want more information by Rabbi Chaim Ovadia, go to Torah ve'ahava on YouTube and check out what he has to say. We're continuing here, moving right along. S.E. Hall says, Lisa, I'm not Jewish, but the way I see it is that anything that can be considered your own ways, your human pleasures, and your own idle words desecrates the Shabbos, the Sabbath. But also the mere fact that you can't have someone work for you would apply to the electric companies, in my view. And many share that view, like I said. Ariel says, Orthodox Judaism is very complex, as are every individual's circumstances. Yes, that's right, which is why, again, our sages say, Aseh lecha rav, make yourself, or right, have yourself a rabbi. Because you're going to have questions on halacha. So make it somebody who really connects with you. And go with someone specific and particular that you connect with, right? Somebody that can advise you, counsel you, give you the halacha. And this was part of the great downfall, in part, of having to write it down. Because again, until that time, different people had different traditions and different rabbis to which they went for consultation and halacha. But then when it had to be written down, all of those opinions were kind of pushed to the side, and it became this. That's a problem. That's not the proper Hebrew way. It's what happened because it had to be written down. It became the proper Hebrew way for like 2,000 years. But halacha before that was many and varied, as I've said before. Yodidiahu says, right, so it's death. It's not being flogged. So he quotes the Torah: a man that will lie with a man that will lie with a male as he does with a woman is an abomination. They both have committed an abomination. They will be put to death. Their own blood is upon them, right? That meaning they caused it to themselves by doing what they did. Lisa says, yes, I would love for you to send me some sources. Thank you. Okay, so you know what? Seeing as how I am not a man of halacha, but Rabbi Chaim Ovadia is, and Jamal Stafford Nathanael is, insofar as he is very much in tune with these teachings and learning them, go with those sources and don't go with any sources that I would bring, because they probably have a better idea at this point in my life. They have a better idea of what the halacha would be. Essie Hall says to Jamal, electricity isn't fire, but I think the same principle applies. Amen to that, HN. Way to start an album. So yeah, so Esial agrees with the idea that it's not fire. And he says about Twist, yeah, what a way to start an album. Jamal, that's my opinion anyways, for whatever it's worth, LOL. Esial continues and says, you could maybe even argue that it sparks something similar to a fire. Right, there's a spark. Right, exactly. Jesus, hello, Jesus, how you doing, man? He says, Wazza! Indeed, well, I'll tell you, Wazza. I'm going to have a drink of water here. That's Wazza. Robert says, dude, my comment got deleted about Theodore Herzl, about a statue of him, whole human in Israel. Well, okay. If Israel was a halacha state, and some people would like to see that come about, then maybe that wouldn't be the case. But seeing as how Israel is not a theocracy, it's not a halachic state right now, though some elements of halacha certainly apply, better or worse, it's the British mandate whipped the British common law on before the state of Israel was around, and we kept the rulers and legislators and whatever, they kept a lot of British common law with in coinciding or simultaneously, right, alongside the Hebrew law, some of it modern, some of it biblical. So I'm sure that it does exist. If you say that it does exist, a statue of him in whole human form. So the Torah would disagree, but the artist who made it probably didn't care, nor do many people, nor do many other people care. It's primarily because nobody is worshiping and bowing down and making offerings to this statue, right? Because you could have a statue of the Buddha with one or two fingers missing, and that would be cool. But if you worship the statue, bow down to the statue, put incense and flowers, and ritualistically have to do with it, that's a different story. That's already worshiping it to some degree. And while I do agree that certain enlightened people are worthy of worship, they are not worthy of idol worship. And that's a whole, right? They're worthy of admiration, but not of actual religious worship. But I'm not a Buddhist, right? I'm coming out against Buddhism or those who worship the Buddha. I can understand why they would, right? Prince Gautama Siddhartha Buddha, he was what a soul, what a soul. S.C. Hall says, HN, I agree, but I was just making a point that under the same standard, the New Testament could be added. Yes, it definitely could be. You're adding to Scripture, and if you say that you're adding to Scripture, and so you're adding to Torah, practically speaking, you're adding to Torah, then yeah, that would be the case with the Scripture, right? With the prophets and the writings and New Testament and whatever. But no, but as I said before, I disagree. There's the 5 books of Moses. As long as you're not adding another book or taking away a book, practically speaking, right? That's not adding to the Torah. It's not adding to the written Torah. Robert says, I marketed you, HN, not this channel, through Jeeves and Yodidia. Wait. I marketed you Hebrew Nazarite, not this channel though. Jesus and Yodidiao are from Ariel Cohen Aloro's channel. Oh yeah, I see. So you were proselytizing, marketing me. Well, you know what? Nobody needs to market me, though. I appreciate the I appreciate the kindness and the good vibes, but nobody should be, I think, marketing me as an individual. If the topic comes about and you say it, you sort of insert it into a conversation, that's all well and good. But as you know, I don't market myself too much. I simply am here, right? This channel is here. I'm on the different social media platforms, even on Reddit. Someone reached out to me on Reddit. I had the subreddit Nazarite that's still around, but something I had quickly but then abandoned, but I didn't delete it. Somebody reached out to me just a few days ago. Another Christian man who took the vow. Let's see. Fire is basically, Jesus says, fire is basically oxidation. Wonder if there isn't a deeper meaning behind it. Well, yeah, I don't know if you were here at the time, but we were talking about lightning and fire, and lightning being part or connected to the element of fire. And, well, let's leave it at that. But yeah, there was some discussion on that. And been great addition. I agree. Jesus and Yodidiao have been a wonderful addition to the channel. They come forth with different ideas, right, and different. Well, Yodidiao with his gematriot. If you remember Yodidiao in the beginning, in the first month or two of you being here, you just were bombarding the chat with gematria. That was going way over my head every single time. And I'm glad that we're able to speak more, even though you do still put in a gematria every now and then. And I'm not telling you not to do that, by the way. You're a free man. But it's better when it comes, as I said, as a beginning or an end, or adjacent to some sort of teaching that has a lot more value for me personally. Hall says to Jesus, there is always something deeper with the Torah, in my opinion. I concur. You can always go deeper. Always. Lisa says, well, all that makes sense. Never thought there was a way to not use the city's electricity. Buying a generator sounds beneficial. I wonder how much gas I would spend using a generator. Could one just totally delete their electric bill? Wonder if it would be cheaper. Hmm. Well, there are many people off the grid, quite literally off the electric grid. You could look into that. Some people don't get an electric bill into their home or wherever they are because they're off that grid. Robert says, I think halacha has made it legalistic, focusing on do's and don't, and not focus on actual Sabbath rest, which is the gift of the Sabbath. Well, I disagree. I think that with all of the halachas, yes, it's legalistic. Yes, it's do's and don'ts, but you need to rest precisely this way. Rest, says halacha, isn't anything you want. You need to rest in a very specific way, because if we are saying that the Shabbos is a taste of the world to come. And if we're saying that the world to come is that Sabbath of creation that never took place, and if we say that the Lord rested from his labors on Sabbath, and we are supposed to be imitating that and remembering that, then there are certain things which you can derive from those early verses in Genesis, and later when Moses speaks of the Sabbath in the Ten Commandments, and in other times, for instance, before the tabernacle is about to be erected, before the work is about to be done, before the work is done, before he speaks one thing, he says the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath. All right, let's see. Lisa says, well, there was a message retracted by Jesus. Let's hope he brings it in later. Lisa says, oh, I already read that. Would it be cheaper with a generator? Figure it out. I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could figure it out. Jesus says to S.E. Hall, not a believer myself, but I can't refute that these texts or sayings left quite the impression on some peoples, though I think much has been changed in writing and story. I'm pretty convinced it has to do with the Sumerians. With the Shomronim, quite possible. The Shomronim are still around. Ariel says, maybe people could die if electricity companies shut down in Israel on Shabbos. Well, look, if you, hey, I think that my woman is here. Look at that. But I just saw her at a glance. I'll get to her. I'll get to you later, woman. Wait, just quickly, if you're in the house, come in the room. It's cool. You know what? Here, if you want to come in the room, I'll point it over here. There we go. Wait, what happened? Okay, we're good. So let's see. Many people would die. Yes, and there are backup generators, and there are in hospitals, for instance, certain things where there are two facets of labor on Shabbos, or and in different things in halacha. One is called gavra and one is called grama. Gavra means you have direct contact with what is being done, and grama means that it's indirect. And so certain things are allowed to be done, halachically speaking, through a grama mode of operation, where something is caused, but not by your direct uh, connection, let's say. It's indirect. You flip a switch, right? Something else is flipped, which flips something else, which flips something else, which flips something else, and it causes a chain reaction, but there is a kind of halachic break in the chain reaction. And in that break, it becomes from you being the one who does the labor to something that happens of its own accord, much like you would set a timer on a heater on Shabbat. Something like that. And I've seen this in hospitals. Many people use them. And there's what's called a Shabbos elevator, a Ma'alit Shabbat. A Shabbos elevator is an elevator that operates of its own accord without anyone pressing the button. And the way that it does it is that it stops at every single floor, opens the door, waits a few seconds, whatever it is, 30 seconds, closes the door, and goes on its merry way. Throughout the entire Shabbat, in hospitals, in hotels, in apartment buildings, you have different elevators, and you have a Ma'alit Shabbat that's designated as a Shabbos elevator. Now, the downside is it'll take you a way longer to reach if you're on the top floor, and then now you're at the bottom floor and you need to go up 30 floors. It'll take you a hell of a lot longer than if you would just walk in and press 30, then we zoom right up. On Shabbos, you are not supposed to be the one who directly involves him or herself with the labor, with a direct connection. So people found ways around it. And the idea of halachic loopholes is something that I mentioned, right? Like a half hour ago. Oh my God, speaking of which, an hour and 6 minutes. We are going strong here. We are going strong. I'm feeling so good right now, people. Feeling so good. Such good vibes. Wait, actually, it's not even 10 o'clock yet, so my woman isn't here. Let's see. True, good point, Ariel. I agree, that is a good point. Say the Nazarene, Nazarite, and Robert. Essie Hall continues and says, simply not an easy issue with an easy answer, right? Which is why Orthodox people need the halacha to contend with modern day advancements and they need modern day solutions for modern day problems. But this is an issue because we don't have a modern day Sanhedrin. We don't have smicha, right? The laying of the hands, proper, right? Laying of the hands. And so there are a lot of things that people who rule on halacha, right, our modern day sages and rulers, the poskim, they can't do it. They can't do it. They can only sort of derive things from earlier rulings, from way, way back. On the other hand, you need to live a life, so how do you contend with it? That's what modern day halacha has to contend with. So long as there's no court and no poskim that can undo certain things and bring new things into existence halachically, then you deal with what you can. S.C. Hall says, Jesus, yeah, some may have been changed, but I don't personally think the changes were truly significant. So yeah, so he's talking about the well, what was he talking about before? Oh, okay, yeah, so changes over there that he was talking to. Okay, so let's keep going here. I'd agree to disagree, says Jesus. Won't expound before the pitchforks and blasphemy. Well, nobody here in this room, it's just me and Pinky. Hi, Pinky. Nobody in this room, I think, would accuse you of blasphemy or pick up a pitchfork. It's the internet, for crying out loud. You can do whatever you want, within YouTube's guidelines, of course. Ariel says, I have no local rabbi to learn from, which is one of the reasons I greatly appreciate being able to learn with you, Jonathan, and I with you, man. It's so much fun. And I strive with all of the discussion, philosophy, theology. I strive to have this channel be something where people can also live out what we are talking here and get information and gain value that can be of practical use in everyday life. That's what I'm going for here. And of course, there's the philosophical, debates and the wonderful intellectually stimulating conversation, which I adore. Ha, late again, says little Andre. Anyway, shalom mishpacha. Hello to you, little Andre. Good to have you here. You are not late. A wizard is never late, little Andre. He arrives precisely when he ought to, when he means to. Ariel says, but the Torah say to my best translation to learn from as many teachers as possible, so I try to do this also. I understand what you mean, and the well, no, let's not go with that. So yeah. Yo says Spooky. Hey Spooky, nice to have you here. And my woman Naama. Hi Dad. I can't sleep. Oh, it's not my woman. It's my boy using her account. Go to sleep, son. Hi, Dad. I can't sleep, so I listened a little. Love you, Dan. Thank you, boyo. I love you too. I hope you're asleep already. Um, Yo, shalom, spooky, said little Andre. You're the best dad. Ah, thank you, my boy, my crown prince. You're awesome. I love you too. Little Andre says to Jonathan, you bedazzle us with your femininity in your videos in general, old and new. Hey man, I could use to get in touch a lot more with my feminine side. With my masculine side too, to be sure, but with my feminine side as well. There is, right, the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu says that in life you should strive to be, if you should strive to be like the female, because you should be receiving, right? And he says, if you lower yourself, then nobody will be on top of you. If you make yourself a vessel, an empty vessel, you will constantly be renewed. And it's a wonderful teaching. Little Andre says, hi, I love you, Dan, tribe of Dan, obviously a typo. Thank you, says, thank you, he says. Well, I thank you, my boy. Go to sleep. Jesus says, rest has been the reason I started thinking, though. Need to go to sleep. Good night, he says. So yeah, rest. There are so many different ideas on what rest means. There are different ideas on what constitutes rest, halachically, not halachically. People could say, what? Rest for me is taking a drive. That's how I rest. I take a drive on the open road. I clear my mind. Definitely, that's what God wants of me. It makes me a better person. What's wrong with that? And then halacha says, no, there are ways to rest and there are ways not to rest, and we need to be very precise about it because Shabbat is such a great and important covenant, and desecrating it is punishable, A, by death, B, it's punishable by you missing the mark. That in itself is the greater punishment. You not getting that real spiritual and physical rest, something like that. So halacha is very precise like that. But again, different people, different rulings, different halachas, different rabbis, different traditions on what. And Rav Yosef, right, in the Talmud, there are in Aramaic, there are many halachas to the Shabbos. Spooky says, hello, Andre, with a green heart. Yeah, man, green. Little Andre says, by the way, Robert, that's a Kabbalistic hand gesture, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's a Kabbalistic hand gesture. Traditionally, it's the gesture that's done by the priests when they bless the people of Israel. Nowadays, people in Israel, the priests do it every day. In the diaspora, in exile, they do it either on Shabbat or only on festivals. And it has to do, again, with the 10 fingers, the 10 sfirot, and the relationship between them. It has to do with the name of God. It has to do with tons of things. So it's not just Kabbalistic, it's actually practical with the way that the energy, the divine energy that was channeled into the priests, they would channel it out through their fingers in that way. And there are reasons, I won't get into it now, also because I don't know it all offhand. Robert says, isn't worrying about do's and don'ts not resting? Okay, fair enough. But once you do solidify your position on what you ought to do and what you ought not do, then the rest is that much more complete. You see? Then you don't have to worry. You learn the halacha, you take it in, you practically implement it into your Shabbos, and then that's your Shabbos. And you don't need to worry. And if there is something that pops up, you know the halacha. Do you know what I mean? So it's a means to an end. Right? Halacha is a path. Halacha is a path. Dudidiao says, little Andre, priestly blessing. Yeah, that's right, the priestly blessing. Right on, right on. No, I am the son. Well, I'm assuming he meant son, S-O-N. Hi, son. I am your son. Yes, you are. Robert says, Levite blessing. Well, it wasn't the Levites, but the Levites traditionally, and well, practically, in synagogue, they wash the hands of the priests while the priests are readying themselves to bless the people. I've done this for many, 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 many times. Washing the hands of the Kohanim, of the priests, is a wonderful thing. I love doing it whenever I get to do it, which isn't a lot in recent years, but I did it for many years. It's a lovely tradition. I am your son. Yes. Little Andre says to Spooky, not my name, but green was one of my favorite colors. Yeah, man. Green is the color, say Pink Floyd. Robert says, what's up, Daniel and Pinky? How do you know my name? Well, he knows. What is your real name, Little? Asks Spooky. Your Abba told us. Yes, I have. Oh, look at that, having a dialogue there with Robert. Spooky says, I agree with you about Shabbat, Robert. Robert says he's going for the 2-hour mark. Well, it's only an hour and a quarter right now. Lord knows when I'll finish. But I'm into it, man. I'm into it. I'm loving this. I want to keep going. Obviously, I won't just keep going for the sake of keeping on going, but Little Andre says, where does the Torah say it's the symbol of the priestly blessing? Well, it says, Vayisa Aharon et yadav vayevarchem. When the first offerings were offered in the tabernacle, Moshe told Aaron, his brother, go get to the altar, make your sacrifice and the people's sacrifice. And then after that, Aharon came down from the altar, raised his hands, and blessed the people. And that's written there in the Torah. Where would it be? Which Torah portion? Which Torah portion? I don't remember offhand. I'll remember at some point. But yeah, it's in the Torah. You can search, Google it, right? Aharon raised his hands and blessed the people. I'm sure we'll find the precise chapter and verse and portion. Robert says, don't put much weight in oral. I think they replaced Ruach HaKodesh with halacha. You know what? That's exactly, or not exactly, but it's definitely something along those lines. Once the temple was destroyed, once the spirit of prophecy and the spirit of sacredness, Ruach HaKodesh, was taken temporarily away from the children of Israel, because of their transgressions and because of the fact that all that went down, what was left is halacha. It says in Masechet Brachot, right, in the Brachot tractate, it says that from the day that the temple was destroyed, the Holy One, blessed be He, has not but 4 cubits of halacha in this world. That's what it says. Now, again, I don't see it as 100% binding, but that certainly speaks to the value, significance, and merit of halacha in the eyes of Orthodox Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, and the sages. So yeah. Robert, it's Daniel. Get to sleep, boy. I can see you're still there in the chat. Get to sleep. Go to bed, boy. Daniel sounds like some bloke from England. Yes, Daniel and Daniel, a different way of saying it. I agree. I don't know about England, but I agree. Yodidiel said, Little Andre, where does it say in the Torah how to pronounce the words? Well, it literally says it, just not in the scroll. It says it in the tradition with the markings and punctuation, as you know. Oh, but I'll let him answer. I'm sure he answered. Daniel is of Eretz Yisrael. Yes, it's true. Yes, he is. Born and raised. Oral Torah, says Yodidiel. That's where it is. Yes, the oral traditions. That is correct. The oral tradition is where it was said how to pronounce the words. I'm still here, he says. Go to sleep. Little Andre says, Robert, don't say that. You'll jinx it. Robert says, good one, Little Andre, or Little Andre Ben Andre. Little Andre Ben Big Andre. Spooky says, ironically, it seems like all of the rules of Shabbat end up making the day more stressful and filled with work than the rest of the week. So yeah, like I said, perhaps, but once you know it and you follow it, you have a righteous path, halachically speaking, to follow. That you can follow and not be confused and not be worried and not be stressed because you know that you're doing what halacha says. And for those who keep halacha and who find it to be 100% binding, that's the way to go about it. Certainly. Little Andre says to Yodidia, what do you mean? If it doesn't say generally speaking, isn't that kind of the point? It doesn't say so anyway, is fine then? But it doesn't say so anyway, is fine then? Little Andre says to Robert, I am the son of Andre indeed. Jesus says to Spooky, perhaps because it was once known to be very important and eventually ritual took over the balance. There is something that has the potential for disrupting the balance. I'll give you that, where the rituals and the different ways that we have rituals, we don't have rituals, the different traditions, there's a way in which it kind of something there may have fallen out of place and out of balance. Ariel says, my cats respect Israelite halacha. They never try to attack my tzitzit. Oh, wow. That really is respect, because those tassels are just a plaything for cats. How do they not attack your tzitzis? Little Andre says, the little version of him or I were how I got the nickname. Okay, so yeah, you're the little one. I hear you. Jesus says, I've always felt the word sinning had such a bad aftertaste, but missing the mark is far more spiritual. It implies something different than the old Catholic view of sin. Well, look, that's why however you break it down, right? Whether it's chet, avera, avon, pesha, there are different names for sin, transgression, wrongdoing. There are all these different things, but it all kind of alludes to you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, and you know it, which is why different things in the Torah and different sacrifices brought in certain ways in order for you to find balance, in order for you to get back to the covenant and back to that middle pillar. I am also in it, he said. My boy said. In what? I don't understand. You're also in what? Okay. Yedidiah says to little Andre, how in the world do you know how to pronounce the words in Torah? The vowel markers came 2,000 years after the Torah was written. Well, again, I disagree. I believe that the Masorah is much, much older. The Masorah, the tradition, is much, much older. But yes, when the oral Torah was written down and the Masorah was written down, that's when that's why we know it now in written form. And until then, it was all oral traditions. And if look, you can't speak of the names and the letters and the vowels and the markings and pronunciation, what is seen, what is heard, what is in the mouth, and what is in the eyes, and what is in the mind, without raising the idea of the tree of life and Kabbalah. It all is tied in there. But let's forget that right now. Practically speaking, it arrived 2,000 years after the Torah because that was when it was written, or along those lines. Until then, it was transferred orally from mother to daughter, from father to son, from master to apprentice, right? As I like to say. Yodidiahu hinting at the oral Torah. Right, yeah, I get that. Spooky says, Jesus, yeah, man, tends to change things over time. Little Andre and Robert are nice, says Daniel. Yes, they are. Many people who come to this channel are very nice. We love speaking and we love discussing different things, just like I do with you, but differently. Little Andre says, by the way, I remember that Firmi Kama guy once said he respected me or something for saying Kabbalah in the Talmud is not all good. Yeah, I remember that too. But while he looked up to me, I again look up to Yonatan. Do not look up to me. I am way too flawed to have anyone look up to me. But you can look alongside me at what I'm looking at. Look at that. Daniel, that's nice of you, says little Andre. And he says to Ariel, I love cats very much, but what does tzitzit has a blue thread have to do with rabbinic halacha, though? No, I'm thinking he says just because it's a string, and cats love strings. Or some. I'm in the chat. Oh, I see. You're in the chat. I see what you mean now, Daniel. Jesus says, seems like there was a period of radical transformation, then a sudden halt. Thus, after years, people started to doubt and others started to profit by proselytizing on their own imaginations. Well, that's quite a sentence. That's quite a comment here. Two sentences. Jesus, I'm inclined to agree, which is why I think that it's now up more so to the individual to discern and to be the kind of man or woman who learns and who seeks truth. And you can even say it's highly subjective and there is no objective truth and blah, 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 blah. Through our own research, even though it's flawed, we are able to discern. And this has to do with intent. Are you looking for loopholes? Are you looking to learn Torah in order to go against it? Are you looking to anger the Most High? Are you looking to go against organized religion? There are so many reasons why someone would sit down and learn. But the basic idea, the premise, if you will, would be I'd like to figure out the truth. If you go with truth, that is the most admirable pillar of Torah, right? Torat emet natan lanu, Moshe emet v'torato emet, we say, again, emet, being that thing which gives you life, like I mentioned with the golem, right? Truth gives you life. The truth, I think he's digging. That burrowing instinct, I love it. Dig, 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 dig. Um, So, yeah, I agree. Proselytizing on their own imaginations sounds kind of right. Also, this idea of organized religion and profit, that's also a very big issue because it used to be in the time of the temple that you would give your tithe, your maaser, 1/10 of your stuff, right? Every month, annually, that whole thing. Set certain things aside and either trade them for money or whatever and bring them to Jerusalem. However you would want to do it, you would give your tithe. And if you wanted to make a vow, and if you wanted to give something of the kindness and goodness or thankfulness of your heart, you were welcome to do so. But this idea of profiting in a structured way, and we can see this, right? We can see this where who was it? Yoshiyahu, King Yoshiyahu of Judah. When there was a time, he says to the priests, "All right, all the money that you get now, you need to allocate it in a proper manner." Right, in the Book of Kings, that's what he tells. That's what he tells. I think it was Shaphan, the priest Shaphan, who was in charge of the different ins and outs of the temple, of the actual literal structure. Right, it was a physical structure which had to be maintained. And he said, "Tell the priests who are gathering money, tell them to give it to the people, to the workers, to the laborers, right? To the people who maintain this house of God. Tell them to do that. All that money does not belong to them. Certain things do belong to the priests, but they have their own things that belong to them in accordance with Torah. Tell them that all that money should go to there." And when it wasn't done for a while, he calls him up and he says, "Hey, I think it was Shaphan. It may have been Yozniah. It may have been Shvenya. I don't recall who it was who was in charge of maintaining the house of God, right, the temple." And he says, "So I couldn't help but notice that it wasn't being done. Go on and strengthen their hands, embolden them in this thing, and tell them to get it done." Yoshiyahu of Judah, what a king! What a king! Oh my God! All right. Let's see. Robert says, "Hey, you guys, well, not hey, you guys. Hey, you guys need to watch Relaxin' Walker on YouTube. He walks all the Israel. No talking, just a relaxing walk through Jerusalem." No, for real? Is this ongoing? I'd love to hook up with him. I'll walk with him. That would be fun. All right, maybe I will check him out. In fact, I'm just gonna copy and paste this so I have it on my list of stuff. Okay. Wait, hold on. Okay. I almost closed the window just now that I'm broadcasting from. That would have been really dumb. I'm glad I didn't. It doesn't come from there, says little Andre. It comes from the written Torah, the only Torah there is, right? So Andre's a Karaite. That's how he rolls. I respect that. Pinky Winky, says Robert Harrison. Talking about you, Pink. Yeah, you're passed out on the bed? That's nice. Jesus says something far out happened thousands of years ago and certainly left behind the proof, that yearning for what was once true. Yes, again, going back to truth. If you start off your journey, continue your journey wherever you are, and you say, "I'd like to figure out the truth," many times you'll find that the path unfolds before you. And even if it doesn't unfold before you, like actually, you will have different, let's say, elements of truth present themselves to you, because that's what you're sending out into the world. And from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, right, and pass out, you're seeking truth. If that's your mindset, you will see truth in different places, and different things will present themselves before you, things that maybe only apply just to you, just for you, things that come into existence just so you will pay attention as such and learn something, find out something, take on something, let go of something. Because when you learn to understand yourself from a place of truth, I think one could be blown away by how quickly you find how little you know, how much you could know, what it is you're doing righteously and truthfully and what not. But it's a great burden, because if you decide to go with what's true, you will find so many faults in yourself so fast. But don't let it get you down, because where you're heading is much greater than any fault or frailty. And as long as you own it and acknowledge it and embrace it without letting it be, but saying, "Okay, this is how it is right now, but I'm going somewhere better," and you look up, right, above that horizon to that shining star of truth, I think you will be able to go with it. Now, the people of Israel have it relatively easy, because we have this book, these many books, right, of primarily the Torah, which where Moses says to Israel, "When you walk into Canaan and you follow these laws, it will be the wise and better thing to do." This is a life of truth, and you can make tons of arguments against Torah. I know, but as a way of life, as a mindset of seek truth and divinity, it will come to you if you seek it, right, in righteousness. Nixa, oh my God, hello Nixa, hi there, shalom. I noticed your channel was gone. Yes, it was for a while. Just wanted to say I'm glad you're back. Just, you know, I've seen other channels taken down for the same silly accusations of sexual content. Yeah. It's true. Is Sean Hurwitz still making vids? So, hey, Nixa, so good to have you here. I deeply appreciate your viewership, your engagement. Nice to have you back. Is Sean Hurwitz, my older brother, still making vids? You know, I don't think I subbed to him again. There are so many people. When I lost my channel, I also lost all the people that I was subscribed to. And so I'm sort of collecting them again bit by bit because I don't remember. But yeah, my brother, I don't think I subbed to him, and I really should. So I don't know if he's still making videos. He should. He definitely should be. Little Andre says to my boy, I'm not always as nice as I am here now, though, but I'm usually nice to nice people. Fair enough. We don't have to be 100% nice. No more Mr. Nice Guy, right? It's not about being nice, it's about being kind. And you can be kind without being nice, because the truth can be an ugly thing. And speaking the truth can be a horrifying thing, doesn't make it any less true. Ariel Marshall says, it's even more impressive considering that I keep my tzitzit my tzitzit length for comedy length for simcha purposes, not caught any fishes with them either, so it could be a mutual respect among all animal kinds. And here, Jamal, if you're still here, here is the practical application of how do you teach your kids Torah, right? And imparting wisdom on the right level. Because he heard me say it, my boy now asks, and I told him to go to sleep, but he's going to do what he will. And this is a channel, and it's public, so he has access. My boy asks, what is homosexual? To which I'll say, well, first of all, it's something that you and I need to talk about man to man. So we'll leave it at that. Ask me another time to my face, and we'll have a conversation. Little Andre says to Robert, speaking of Pinky, I just wanted to know last time if she understands both English and Hebrew. Why are you asking Robert? You should ask Pinky. What's the question here? Spooky says, if God isn't truth, then what is truth? Well, again, Spooky, I don't know God. All I know is how God reveals himself to me. One of the attributes through which God is revealed is truth. And so you could take that however you want. I equate to a large and great degree truth with Torah. So that's what I'm going to say. Because I don't know what God is and isn't, or rather, I don't know what God is, but I know what God isn't. If I can perceive it, it's not God. If it's revealed to me, it's not actually God. It's all revelations. It's all various apparitions, if you will, and attributes, properties, but not God. Not. Oh, sorry about that. Not God. It's everything but God. Little Andre says, what languages does she respond to? She responds to tone of voice, right? I don't know if she responds to languages, but we did teach her a few phrases back when she was a pup, which have stuck, but we weren't very diligent or militant about it, so that, but both, really. Because, if I want her to, both. There are a couple of phrases in each language. So let's see. Jesus says that's what the Nazarite vow means to me, to seek and to never stop. Amen. Emet. Amen, by the way, also means emet, truth. It also means El Melech Ne'eman. That's an acronym, right? For being a loyal king god. El Melech Ne'eman. My boy says, okay, I still like how you talk and you don't use swear words. Well, Daniel, as you know, because you live with me for a long time now, I don't use swear words in day-to-day, but I believe that swear words have their time and place. Yes, they do, but it's not how I speak on the regular. Because if I'm going to swear, if I'm going to use either a curse word or a swear word or whatever it is, I want it to have meaning. And so I'm not going to use it all the time, otherwise it might lose its meaning. But I have nothing against those who curse all the time, right? I've mentioned Gary Vee to him. As occasionally I'll watch Gary Vee and he curses a crap ton. And I'll say, see, here's a dude who curses all the time. It's simply how he speaks. He's not looking to offend anyone. That's just how he speaks. But I'll speak the praise of my boy for just a second. He was at a friend's house back in the Netherlands, and he came back from that friend's house, and he says, I didn't like it there. The father wouldn't stop cursing. He said this, he said that. It was always going on. And I said, yeah, that's how some people talk. That's okay too. The question is, boy, what do you do? Do you want to be the type to use the swear words all the time or not? So, that's how I face it. Little Andre says, Daniel, that's a question for your dad to answer, not our place. Right. So like I said, hang on a second. Okay. Little Andre says to Spooky, the Torah. Yeah, exactly. Emet, Torah, Torah emet, for sure. Ariel says, I said Israelite, Little Andre, though tzitzit seems to be a custom embraced by many different kinds of people, often for purposes other than catfishing. Wait, catfishing. I see what you mean. Yes, ongoing, no lie. Right? That's right. Going on with no lies. Right? What does Dr. Jordan Peterson say? Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Because you don't always know what the truth is, but you do know when you tell a lie. You can feel it, you can sense it, and you know it. If you know that it's a lie and you speak it, you know that it's a lie. Jesus says to Robert, you've got a knack for connecting people, my dude. Yeah, quite right. Relaxing walker. Jeeves, says Robert, thanks, my man. How you been? Spooky says, yes, I was saying that God is truth itself, Little Andre. Right, and I'm inclined to agree to some degree. Little Andre says, Daniel, nobody here that I know of use cuss words, but I never or almost never use cuss words in real life or elsewhere. Yes, and there's no curse words in Hebrew, which is great. So yeah, many of the cuss words that we have are borrowed from Arabic or from other languages, but basically the cuss words, if you will, in Hebrew, and I'm talking about, let's say, biblical temple era Hebrew, are very intellectual in nature. But in time, yes, there are certain words in Hebrew which are meant to hurt, right? For instance, when King Saul turns to his son, right? Why didn't David show up? Or rather, when his son Jonathan, when he asks him, "What's your beef with David?" Shaul turns to him and he goes, "Ben na'avat hamardut, halo yadati ki bocher ata beven yishai levoshtecha ulevoshet ervat imecha." He says, you are a son of insolence and rebellion. So that kind of thing. It's more like on an intellectual level. Jesus says to Robert, it's getting harder and harder to answer such a question. I'd say just about the same as you. So how have you been? Right? So how have you been? That's the answer that's getting harder to answer. Oh, that's the question that's getting harder to answer. I'd probably agree here. Let's see. Oh wow, it's already 10:15. Whew. I might stop soon. I'm feeling my throat starting to leave, to go, to have its own way. Ugh. Little Andre says, and what also makes it Lashon HaKodesh? Right, so Lashon HaKodesh, the sacred tongue, that's part of how Hebrew is known, the sacred tongue, not only because some people consider it to be the divine language in which God created the world, and a language which is among the first, if not the first language uttered, that's disputed, of course, but because there are no cuss words in Hebrew. Robert says, ups and downs, but all in all, good now. Yofi, you know what? It's the here and now. Sure, we should give thanks. Not thanks, thought. We should give thought to the future and sometimes, to the past to learn from it. But as long as you and I here, good people, we can sit here wherever you are, if it's day or night, if you're at work, if you're on your way home, if you're lying in bed, or if you're doing I don't know what, as long as you and I can be here right now and engage live in this discussion, means that by and large, right now, at this moment, things are okay. Thank God. I appreciate this moment. Living in the now, this very moment, it's a wonder to me. It's a wonder that I can be on here live yapping away, that there are so many good people here who aren't cussing, who are willing to engage and to provide value to others, connect with them, share of their knowledge and their wisdom. This is no small thing. And what we do echoes, right? It echoes. Jesus says everything considered that might be the best answer. Yeah, I concur. It is the best answer. S.C. Hall says, is Sean the one that plays in Smash Mouth? Yes, he is. My big brother plays with Smash Mouth and Enrique Iglesias on guitar. And he's as an artist myself, right, a writer, I look up to him as an artist and somebody who pursued and continues to pursue his dreams on multiple levels. He just goes for it, man. He is goal oriented. He knows what he wants and he goes for it. I admire that. I'm a lot less like that. I could use to be a lot more like him. I can use, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, see, I'm getting tired here. I'm forgetting my words. I can take a lot from my three brothers. They are each in his own way so amazing. There's a lot that I can learn from them and take from them, and I'd like to. By the way, said little Andre, if Lisa or Karen are still here, I'll beat Karen and maybe Jonathan too in a cherry picker contest. Oh yes? Well, we'll see about that. Oh, Dad, I forgot. My tooth fell. Ah, look at that. Beautiful. His tooth has been dangling for days. Your tooth came out? Yofi. Todale ya. Good. Good. I'm glad that your tooth fell out. Robert says, dude can slay a guitar, by the way. Yes, he can. You know, he would himself say he doesn't have the most technique. He doesn't, he's not the best guitar shredder, but I say he's got soul, man. And he's got technique in the sense of maybe he's not the quickest, right? He's not the fastest, but he is a dedicated professional. He is ever the consummate professional, as it says on his bio. And yeah, he can slay a guitar for sure. So many different styles, so many different. And he taught me my first chords. My father and brother taught me my first chords, and he sat with me. He's listened to me. We've recorded one or two things together. Just kind of in passing, nothing major, not in a studio, but so yeah, yeah. He's a good kid. I love my brothers. I love my family. Each of them is each of them is special in their own way, for real. Obviously, I'm biased. Lisa, LOL, that little Andre there. Yeah, cherry pickers are us, huh? Ariel says, correct me if I'm wrong, little Andre, but doesn't Torah mention teaching? Surely all teachings come from God if you believe in omnipotence. How beneficial a teaching is a whole new question. Well, then it's not just teachings. Then everything that has ever is, was, and will be comes from God. If you look at it from an omniscient point of view, right? You cherry pick verses. I cherry pick entire books and chapters in the Bible. Ooh, good call. Good call. Yeah, I suppose. So let's say you're a greater cherry picker by volume, and I'm a greater cherry picker, perhaps, or I'm not. I don't know. How do we? You know what? Let's leave it at that. Andre, I concede. The battle is between you and Lisa. You and Karen. You have it out. The battle of the cherry pickers. Yeah, man. I cherry pick and make no apologies. Karen says, little Andre, I would win. That is all. Very well, we have our winner. Oregon Freebird, you are the cherry picker extraordinaire. I salute you. Robert says, was your guitar named after your grandma? So yeah, I said that at the time when I had my first guitar. For a short period of time, I named her Alice. And then I don't remember who it was. Or anyway, I got the thought that I probably shouldn't name an inanimate object after someone who had lived. It's one thing if you name a living thing after someone who had lived and died. Naming an inanimate object, even though it was just it was an homage to my grandmother, but I didn't. I stopped it after a short time because it didn't feel quite right to me. But yeah, I named my guitar Alice. My first guitar was named Alice for a short while after my grandma. Wow, interesting. If it is revealed to me, it is not God. Yes, it is all a revelation. Because if I can perceive it, it already means that it has gone through multiple filters, endless. And it's not the actual thing. However, through the revelation, I can sort of discern and reach back through the filters by working on myself and sanctifying myself, if you will, purifying myself, cleansing myself, and take that however you will. You are able to remove the filters, build a wider vessel, and receive more without it pouring out and losing, and being wasted. Something along those lines. But yeah, I've been saying it for a very long time. If I can perceive it, it's not God. So everything I have is revelations, which is why when people say, you know, what is God? Who is God? I don't know God. I really don't. Little Andre, yes, but someone deleted in an unappropriate way. Daniele, my love, my crown prince, go to sleep. Go to sleep. It's late. Go to sleep. Spooky says, reminds me of a quote by St. Augustine, which goes, Si comprehendis, non est Deus. If you have understood, it is not God. Yeah, that's precisely right. If you can comprehend it, it means that it's not God. Yeah, but now that this again is not to say that you cannot, through your understanding, get to know more revelations of God. Like I said, you need to build yourself up into a vessel, into a human in the image of God that can embody that revelation in every walk of life, in your very being, physical, spiritual, but it's not God. It's all a revelation. Tselem Elohim, right? The image of God is not God. A revelation of God is not God. It's all a revelation, right? Coming down to us through the tree of life. S.E. Hall says, when you say it's not God, do you mean it's just not holistically God? Why would the revelation not be a part of the holistic God? Right. So now we get into a very, very, very big thing, which ancient Kabbalists also weren't clear on. Is the Sphira of Keter, the highest and first, the initial revelation, before it trickled down through the tree, that root, is it part of God or not? And if you go with different Kabbalists, they'll tell you different things. I, going with the teachings of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, I say what he says and what I knew from before I started learning him, but he certainly made it a lot more precise. No, the Sphira of Keter, the first revelation ever, is already a revelation, and as such, it's not God. Now, what you do have is a revelation of Keter that is so high, and there is no high and low in the spiritual world. It's just something we use here that's tangible in order to kind of understand and discern. There is no up, down, left, right. That's all here. But we use these terms in the physical world to, right? It's an allegory. So there is that initial revelation of the crown of Keter, which is very, let's say, adjacent to whatever God is, but it's not God. It is not, according to the Ramak and many other Kabbalists, and many would disagree. But no, it is not. The Keter is not God. It's the first revelation, that tiny, imperceptible, unknowable thing. But compared to God Almighty, it is knowable. We give it a name. We call it Keter. We call it a crown. So that's what I mean. So why would it not be part of God? It would not be part of God because God is the creator, and everything else that we can ever speak of or know of is a creation, a construct that is made for us to elevate ourselves, and by doing so, transcend that very construct. But you gotta start with what you know, and what you know is what you understand, and what you can see and hear and taste and smell and touch, and those are all things having to do with the brain, and that has to do with the nature of consciousness, but it's not God. It's only how you perceive God. Like I say here, you're listening to my voice through the vocal cords. You're looking at my physical being, and I am clothed. Can you say without a doubt that you can actually say what I am? And you give me a name, Jonathan, right? You can say I have different attributes. I'm this high, not high. I am this high. I'm this tall. I weigh this much. I can bench press only this much, right? I'm limited in my physicality and in my physicality in inside and out. Much like you can't say precisely what Jonathan is. You cannot precisely say what God is, but you can look at me and say, here's Jonathan. He has a beard, he has long hair, he has glasses, he's speaking English, his voice is this note or that note, this octave or that octave. He's wearing these clothings, he's on this channel, looking into this camera, everything but what I am exactly. That you don't know. In the very same way, as an allegory, you can say that you know everything except for what God is. He can be revealed from Keter to Malchut, right? All the way down the line, through the tree of life. in a multiplicity of ways, through all of the intricate connections and networkings of the 10 Sfirot, through uncounted worlds and revelations. And all of that is something that you can perceive, and as such, it is by definition not God. That's why it won't be part of God actually, because God is the creator. Everything else is a creation. Everything. That's the Ramak's way of looking at it. Now, the Ramak, well, let's leave it at that. That's what I'm thinking. And that's what I'm going with, and that's what I've gone with for years. But I love the Ramak's teachings. I've mentioned it before so much. Ooh, love it. Little Andre says to Ariel, huh? I'm not sure I understood you there. Jesus says, LMAO, laughing me ass off. I can just imagine which swear words he heard in the Netherlands. Yeah, he heard many, I'm sure. But and here's the thing. Speaking of kids and religion and Torah or spirituality, it's like I'm not hiding him away from the world, and I'm not hiding the world away from him. But he knows, because he sees it in everyday life, that his father and his mother act in a certain way. We do certain things and we don't do other things. We keep a certain house and we don't keep a different certain house. And he is welcome to go to other houses and see how they conduct themselves. He is welcome to, let's say, listen to whatever music he wants, generally speaking. I'm talking like by and large, or go to a house where the father curses a lot. It's like when I heard that, I wasn't thinking to myself, oh, gee, I sent him to a friend's house. His father cursed a lot. Therefore, because I don't curse a lot and I'm not a fan and I give it its time and place, therefore, I probably shouldn't send him there lest he be influenced. That thought did not cross my mind for a second. I had no problem with him going back there, because I'm not hiding him away from the world and I'm not hiding the world away from him. But I trust that I'm showing him a certain path and a certain way that will already embed in him a kind of outlook and mindset, right? As I love to say, I'm screwing him up, all my kids, right? I'm screwing them up in a very specific way, my way. And this works. Do you know how I know that it works? Because he came to me and he said, I didn't like being there because of that. Meaning, now, again, I said, okay, you feel free to not go back there if you don't want. I have no problem with you going back there, because he needs to know that some people are just like that. And that's okay. No need for him to get necessarily offended. But what I want to cultivate within my boys and myself is that sensitivity of discernment, of knowing what you would like to do and not like to do and why. When he came to me and he said, Abba, he was cursing all the time and I didn't like it, that means that his sensitivity is in tune with what he likes and doesn't like. And that's a great thing. Now, you could say that it's an innate thing for everybody, regardless of how his parents teach him or her. But I saw that as a very good sign. So let's continue on here. Spooky says, perhaps he means it is only an aspect which has been revealed and not fully God. So yeah, you could say that, and some people say that the 10 Sfirot are an actual part of God, but a facet. There's this very interesting idea of what's called Eser Sfirot HaGenuzot B'Ma'atzilan, which means the 10 Sfirot which are hidden away inside of the Creator. Basically saying, if you have something finite, it means that at some point in the infinite, there was the possibility of finitude. And if there is the possibility of finitude that we see now, we live and die in the image of God, right? Our bodies die, the world decays, stars explode. If that can happen, that means that in some small part, some unknowable part, there is that part of God which is finite. But I say no, based only on the tree of life. So take it or leave it, right? I say no. It's not a facet of God, and that's part of the full God. There's a complete break between creator and creation. And this thing, creation, includes everything, every single thing. That's how I see it. And that's also part of how I keep myself in check. But it's precisely through this great divide that I'm trying to bridge, right? There's this gap between creator and creation, and I'm trying to work my way up the ladder. So I will be able to get so close and make a vessel that is so wonderfully empty that I will be able to receive the maximum amount, let's say, of divinity, and that I will have no, I won't say knowledge, that I will have the ability and the capacity to channel it through me lest I explode. Keep yourself empty and you will always be full, right? Like the Tao Te Ching says. My boy says, I hear dad from tablet and real place. It's annoying. So yeah, he's hearing me double. Dude, go to sleep. My boy, my crown prince, go to sleep. You need to go to sleep. Two Jonathans, double trouble. So yeah, two Jonathans indeed. Yodidio. Ha 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 ha, says Jesus. S.E. Hall says, that is good advice from Jordan Peterson. That guy is something else. Oh my God, yes he is. Yes he is. Dr. Peterson, say what you want about his political views or whatnot, and say that he shouldn't say things about nutrition. I get all that. But oh my God, what such wisdom. And I, as somebody who grew up religious and am a student of the Tree of Life, I can see so much like real wisdom in the way that he articulates things. It's lovely, just lovely. Little Andre says to Spooky, of course he is a truth, but I'm not sure if he himself is truth, which is a concept. That's correct, it is a concept. The word God is just a word. And like I told little Andre, I think in the chat, I think it was little Andre in the chat, in our DMs, I told him, or maybe in the comments, I told him, if you say God, we each have a different idea of what that is. Some people actually believe it's an old man that lives in the sky with a robe and a beard. Other people think that he's a tyrannical, ruthless, sadistic judge. Others hear the word God and think of love and light and kindness. Some hear God and they are mortified. Some hear God and they are with open arms. And it's like, it's really highly subjective, which is why I don't usually say I believe in God, because I don't know God. I say I believe that God reveals himself to me in everything. Little Andre says to my boy, ouch, did it hurt? It is annoying. Crazy question, says Robert. Don't really matter, but was Zeresh Haman's wife Amaleki? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I never asked that question. It is a good question. Look into it. I will put that again in my list. Was Zeresh an Amalekite? Good question. All right. Yes, I cried, but it's over. Oh, talking about his tooth. I cried, but it's over. Oh, I'm sorry you cried, boyo. I'm glad it's over. Karen, think again, says little Andre. All right. The battle of the cherry pickers. Oh, Pinky wants to be let out. Give me a sec. Oh, thank you, boy. Oh, go to sleep. Hey, woman. You can come in. What? What do you want, baby? No. Come on, guy. He wants to join the broadcast. No, dude. Go to sleep. All right. So my woman is home. My boy is still awake. I need to end. You know what? It's almost 2 hours. It's a good time to stop. I'm gonna stop right here, right now. I'll continue this chat on Wednesday. I'll look into the different questions and into Relax and Walker's Dude's channel. I hope. If I didn't get to your question, your comment, your whatever it is now, my apologies. I'll get to it, God willing, on Wednesday. Also, no, you know what? Forget that. On Wednesday. Until then, I thank you deeply from the bottom of my kishka. I thank you for being here with me, your engagement, your viewership, your subscriptions, your time. I value it so much. I hope I was also of some value to you people out there. God willing, I will see you on Wednesday for some more rants, rambles, cherry pickings, and hopefully a little bit of Torah. God bless.